and make it accessible to the public. So are we all set now? We're going to begin streaming. In the event there's any reason why we need to go into private session, we'll do that. But in the interest of the public, we are going to stream this hearing. Because it is virtual, I'm going to ask if we could take a roll call, commissioners. Commissioner O'Brien, good morning.
Good morning. I am here.
Commissioner Hill.
Good morning. I'm present.
And Commissioner Skinner.
Good morning. I'm here.
Okay, great. So we'll get started. And you'll need to bear with me because this is an adjudicatory hearing. There are a little bit of formalities that we need to take care of, and it does require a lengthy reading. We're continuing to work on ways to streamline this a bit, but bear with me. So good morning, and today is Thursday, June 16th, 2022. And as I said, this is an adjudicatory hearing before the Massachusetts Gaming Commission relative to the renewal of a gaming beverage license issued to Wynn Mass LLC for operations at Encore, Boston Harbor. My name is Kathy Judd-Stein. I'm chair of the commission, and I'm joined today by my colleagues, Commissioner Eileen O'Brien, Brad Hill, and Nikisha Skinner. The entire commission will preside over the hearing and decision of this matter, and this hearing is convened pursuant to 205 CMR 101.01 paragraph 2 subsection J, and will be conducted in accordance with 205 CMR 101.01, the informal fair hearing rules outlined in 801 CMR 1.02 and Chapter 30A of the General Laws. I'd also like to notify everyone, as I've already said, it's being streamed, but it's also being recorded. A notice of hearing dated June 13th, 2022 was issued in the matter to the parties. Therein it identifies the issues that this hearing is intended to address. And the commission has indicated that it will specifically be considering the issues discussed in the gaming beverage license application pursuant to its authority under General Laws, Chapter 23K, Section 26, but also what is contemplated in our regulations 205 CMR 136.04, subsection 1, relative to the gaming beverage license application, its form, and its renewal. To that end, the cited regulation sets out the specific considerations of the commission deciding this matter, and they include the following. So number one, whether the application meets all the requirements of regulations 205 CMR 136.00 and our statute Chapter 23K, Section 26, and contains at least the following information. That would be the gaming license name, licensee name and contact information, proof of insurance in accordance with 205 CMR 136.07, subsection 1, a licensed area application form as specified in 205 CMR 136.04, subsection 2, for each area of the gaming establishment in which the gaming licensee seeks to sell or distribute alcoholic beverages, and a description of the parts of the premises of the gaming establishment in which the consumption of alcoholic beverages will not be allowed for purposes of ensuring the integrity of gaming, public health, welfare, or safety, or other reason. Number two, whether issuance of the license would in some way compromise the integrity of gaming and or public health, welfare, or safety as articulated in 205 CMR 136.03, subsection 4. There are two parties before us today, and all are represented by legal counsel, and I'll ask that Ms. Crum and Ms. Hall each please identify yourself and your teams and advise the commission as to whom you represent as applicable. Let's start. Good morning. I think that Director Lilios, if you could identify the team, please.
Yes, good morning, Chair. So I actually will be representing the Division of Licensing here, and I will call upon Chief Enforcement Counsel Heather Hall for a portion of the presentation this morning.
Okay. Thank you. At the conclusion of my opening comments, this proceeding will commence with opening remarks. Each party will be offered an opportunity to make a statement, though it's not required. And after opening statements, we will, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Crum, my apologies, if you could identify your team.
Good morning. I'm Jackie Crum, Senior Vice President and General Counsel for Encore Boston Harbor, and I'm joined today by my colleague my colleague Juliana Catanzariti, also of the legal department at Encore Boston Harbor.
My apologies for that, Ms. Crum. I am not reading the room correctly. Thank you so much. And so we're all set. And as I said, after opening statements, we would move to the presentation of the evidence in this matter. The IEB will be called upon to present its findings and recommendation to the Commission pursuant to 205 CMR 136.03, subsection 3. Any commissioner may ask a question of anybody presenting information at any point during or following the presentation. Just please feel free to interrupt if I miss somebody's hand going up. At the conclusion of the IEB's presentation, the licensee through counsel will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions of any individual who presented information on behalf of the IEB relative to any matter addressed in the application memo or to which he or she spoke. At the conclusion of the IEB's presentation, the licensee will be given the same opportunity to make a presentation. They may call any witnesses and present any other evidence they desire. As before, any commissioner may ask any question of any witness or presenter at any time during or after any presentation, and the IEB may also ask any clarifying questions of any presenter at the conclusion. Either party may raise any objection it desires at any time. We just ask the basis for all objections be clearly stated. And finally, at the conclusion of the presentations of all the evidence, the IEB and licensee will be provided an opportunity to make any closing remarks, summing up their views of the evidence. Let's not. So before we begin, I understand that there are a number of exhibits for consideration at this hearing that have been exchanged by the parties in advance. Commissioners, I believe you've all had access to them. Those exhibits are as follows. Exhibit A is the gaming beverage license renewal application submitted by the licensee dated June 10th, 2022. Exhibit B will be the description of the service areas, including the individual area application submitted by the licensee in an appendix to the gaming beverage license renewal application dated June 10th, 2022. And Exhibit C is the memo drafted by the IEB and Licensing Division to the Commission discussing the gaming beverage application, their findings and recommendation dated June 13th, 2022. Okay. You can just bear with me for 1 minute. Okay. So are there any objections to the exhibits being marked and entered into evidence today?
Not from the IEB.
Thank you, Director Williams.
Not from us.
Thank you. Okay, so these exhibits will be admitted into evidence, and for purposes of ensuring a clean record, I ask the parties, when possible, please refer to those exhibits by letter when referring to any of the documents. Okay, if any party would like to have any additional documents entered into evidence during the course of the hearing, please ensure that they're properly introduced and marked for the record. The Commission anticipates that its inquiry at this proceeding will be related to the matters addressed in the gaming beverage license renewal application and contained in the notice of hearing. In the event that a line of questioning conducted by the Commission moves into an area that has not been included in the report or notice, but that is material to the final determination of this matter, any party may request a recess in the proceeding in order to review the issue. Commission will end up deliberating privately and make a final decision at the conclusion of the evidentiary portion of the hearing, and the decision will be issued as promptly as possible. If at any point during the Commission's deliberations it determines that further testimony or document are desirable, it reserves the right to ask for that additional evidence before making its final decision. So now we will swear the witnesses in. And I'm presuming that we have our complete set of witnesses. So anyone who will be testifying at this proceeding, please raise your right hand. Okay, thank you. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will provide before the commission at this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
May the record reflect that you all responded by affirmative. Thank you very much. A proceeding of this nature necessarily requires the consideration of a wide variety of information that takes several forms. In this case, some of the information documentation may include commercially sensitive information. The public discussion of such information may place an entity at a competitive disadvantage if such information were to be publicly discussed. For the commissioners to be able to execute our legal obligations effectively and diligently prior to making a final finding, we must be at liberty to fully inquire relative to any of these sensitive matters without compromising the individuals or entities involved. Accordingly, my colleagues and I may elect to exercise the discretion afforded in accordance with 205 CMR 101.01 paragraph 7 to close this proceeding for the public to fully address certain matters, and I invite my colleagues to alert me in the event that you have such a matter to discuss. Before we begin, it is my understanding that a pre-hearing was conducted on Wednesday, Councilor Grossman, with representatives of the applicant, the IEB, and as I said, our General Counsel, Todd Grossman, at which procedural and evidentiary issues were discussed. Do either party have any preliminary issues or objections that you wish to raise?
We do not.
All set?
Yeah, IB does not.
Excellent, thank you. And with that, I will ask Councilor Crum on behalf of Encore Boston Harbor to begin. Please proceed with any opening remarks you wish to make, and thank you today for your participation and for Juliana. And Juliana, I am going to try to say your last name correctly. Artizanarati?
Catanzariti.
How does
Close, it's fine.
work on it? Okay, thank you. I'm going to do it one more time. Catanzariti. You say
Catanzariti.
that's I'm going on the wrong. Catanzariti.
Yes.
Closer? Okay, excellent. I to hear over and over. Thank you so much for participating today, both of you, and we'll get started with your initial remarks. Ms. Crum.
I'll be very brief. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Obviously, our liquor license, our beverage license is a very important component of our business, something we take very seriously. We've been working, I think, quite diligently over the last 3 years with the team to make sure that we're in compliance as much as humanly possible, and appreciate your consideration today.
Okay, thank you. And now, Director Lilios, do you have any introductory remarks that you wish to make?
Yeah, I wasn't really planning to do any kind of opening, but I think it bears noting that today really is a milestone of sorts. You know, the fact that the initial license is getting ready to expire means that the property is coming up on its 3rd anniversary. And, you know, who could have predicted what the past 2.5 years would have been like. So I did just want to note that for all of us, you know, all of the unanticipated, unprecedented work that's gone into these past 2.5 years seems noteworthy at this point.
Really important commentary. Why don't you go right ahead then to IEB's presentation next, Director Lilios.
Great.
We thank you and your team for all the work.
Thanks so much, Chair. So 23K and our alcohol regulations authorize the Commission to grant a beverage license for the sale and distribution of alcoholic beverages to be consumed on the premises of the gaming establishment. Encore has submitted a renewal application to the Division of Licensing. The Licensing Division requested some additional information as part of the to become part of the application submission, and Encore responded promptly and thoroughly and has submitted a complete packet. Encore also has submitted the $15,000 fee for the renewal application. Encore submitted an application for the overall beverage license, which is Exhibit A in your packet, and then a separate licensed area application form for each licensed area in the gaming establishment, and that is Exhibit B. There are 25 licensed areas on the property, and licensed area is a defined term in the regulations and refers to a specific space within the gaming establishment where the sale, distribution, or storage of alcoholic beverages to be consumed on the premises is permitted under the license issued by the commission. Those 25 licensed areas are listed in Exhibit B, and they are also listed for your convenience on pages 3 and 4 of the licensing division's memo. At the outset, I want to thank Lisa Bruckner, our licensing intake officer, because that was a lot of paperwork to take in, and she was very conscientious in making sure that that whole submission was in order. The beverage license itself issues to Encore as the gaming licensee, and most of the licensed areas on the premises, those 25 areas, most of them are operated by Encore. 5 of them are operated by registered vendors whose premises are leased to them by Encore. And those 5 leased areas are Mystique, which has a restaurant and lounge concept, Memoir, which is the nightclub, Shake Shack and Frank and Nick's, which are casual eateries, and Fratelli, which is a full-service restaurant on the property. One individual is designated as the manager of the overall beverage license, and that individual is the director of restaurants and beverages for the property, and she is registered and in good standing. The licensing division, through David McKay, has connected with that manager and has confirmed that she is familiar and educated on the alcohol regulations that apply throughout the entire property. For the 5 leased spaces, each of those spaces has a jointly responsible person, and those individuals have been identified in the application packet, and they are all registered with the commission, and their registrations are in good standing as well. But as I said, Encore holds and is ultimately responsible for the license, and Encore's contracts with each of those 5 lessees contain clauses which enable Encore to monitor compliance with the alcohol regulations and remove any jointly responsible person if the lessee is in violation of the regulations. The licensee also carries a high level of liquor liability insurance in an amount that far exceeds the regulatory minimum, and that's with its liquor liability policy alone. The regulation has a clause that the liquor insurance policy is supposed to have no annual aggregate limit. I have learned that there really appears to be no insurance product available to a policyholder that is open-ended on the annual aggregate limit. So Encore has achieved the functional equivalent of this clause by having the liquor policy far in excess of the regulatory minimum. Plus, Encore has an additional umbrella policy that would kick in the event that the liquor policy might be exhausted in any given year. And that reaches an incident amount, again, that far exceeds the amount in the regulation. I've flagged this regulation for regulatory review for us as part of our process, and do note that this is the policy that Encore has had all along. And the regulation appears to call for something that is not available to the insured party. But IEB is comfortable that Encore has achieved the intent of the regulation with its policy amounts. The application asks to renew the 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. service in 2 of the licensed areas, the main casino floor through its service bars and beverage carts, and the Black Tier Lounge. And of course, under the 2017 amendment to 23K, that 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. service is limited to patrons who are actively engaged in gaming. Encore does have coming up on a 3-year history of compliance with the alcohol regulations, and I've asked Attorney Hall to summarize the history of compliance with the alcohol regs for you over the first 3 years of that initial license. So I'd like to turn it over to Heather for her summary now.
Thank you, Loretta, and good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I just wanted to provide a high-level overview of the non-compliance that the IEB has addressed over the last 3 years. And I would first note that it's not surprising that in this environment, there have been instances of non-compliance that have been observed. There is a high level, as you all know, of surveillance in the casino environment, and there's a 24/7 presence of the gaming agents and the State Police Gaming Enforcement Unit. Over the last 3 years, the IEB has addressed non-compliance issues related to alcohol service with EBH, Fratelli, and with Memoir. And the types of non-compliance that the IEB has addressed kind of fall into certain categories, including unsecured alcohol, serving alcohol to patrons who are not actively gaming between the hours of 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., instances of not providing advance notice to the IEB of a portable bar on the casino floor, and instances of over-serving alcohol. And some of those involve issues around bottle service that we've seen at the nightclub. The IEB has also addressed serving alcohol to underage individuals in some of these non-compliance matters. And as the Commission is aware, from our conversation at a previous meeting, instances of non-compliance are addressed in accordance with our procedures. The IEB addresses non-compliance at different levels, and those include notices of non-compliance, or NCFs, that are issued from the gaming agents, and also notices of non-compliance that are issued from the Chief Enforcement Counsel's office. Now, in terms of the corrective actions that have been set out in notices of non-compliance, those also include more training or more retraining, depending on the circumstances. They may include providing documentation to the IEB of the steps that the entity has taken to address the non-compliance matter. And that also includes providing documentation showing that corrective or disciplinary action has been taken against employees who have violated alcohol service policies. They also include providing confirmation of tips training on a monthly basis, and in some cases adjustments of policies, which, for example, include adjusting the protocol for ensuring that staff are being trained and that there is a signed acknowledgement by the staff member with the date that they were trained. And I think that's been helpful in going forward in addressing some of the non-compliance matters. And in terms of some of the proactive measures that licensees have taken themselves, in some circumstances, we may reach out about a non-compliance matter and the employee has already been disciplined. So there is this effort to identify the need for that and also potentially retraining of employees. There's also requirements that tips trainings be completed before starting employment. And I would note that Memoir has instituted a policy where its employees in Mystique and in Memoir are tips trained before they begin employment. And that's actually stricter than the regs. So that's something I thought would be important to point out. There's also pre-shift briefings that Memoir has instituted, which are in the industry known to be effective in curbing alcohol over-service issues. And those include reminders about alcohol policies. So in sum, to date, the IEB has not issued a fine or a suspension of any, or EBH or any of the leased outlets. The IEB, however, remains poised to exercise its regulatory discretion when warranted, and the Chief Enforcement Counsel's office will continue to work closely with the gaming agents, the GEU, the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, as well as EBH and the leased outlets. And with that, I would just like to say, we very much appreciate the responsiveness on both the EBH side and also from the leased outlets and their continued cooperation with the IEB. Thank you.
Thanks,
Commissioner
Heather.
O'Brien, should we, I'm wondering, because I know we all have questions for Heather. Director Niels, I think that it probably makes sense for us to interrupt your testimony and not hold the questions at this point and address the non-compliance issue. Is that okay?
Of course, that's okay. I do have one comment that I think you should hear right before your questions. So if I can proceed with just one other factual piece. Heather mentioned the ABCC, the Alcoholic Beverages and Control Commission, and by statute, their liquor enforcement unit works in conjunction with the IEB, and we have ABCC investigators on site in the property. They are, obviously highly trained in beverage enforcement, and they are aware of this renewal application. They were invited to raise concerns, and they didn't raise any. They did not raise any concerns. So I wanted you to hear that as part of your review now.
And before we, and I know it's a little bit disruptive, but I think given the differences in categories of questions, it makes sense to disrupt a bit right here. Before we go, can you remind us all, the public included, the actual date of the expiration of the license?
June 23rd.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner O'Brien, your question, please.
I did. So as you may or may not recall, I was not necessarily in favor of the 2 to 4 extension that went with this in the initial issuance 3 years ago. And in talking with GEU and IEB, I know that there is an uptick in incidences that happen on the floor. Part of that is just inherent in the late hour time, regardless of the 2 to 4. But I'd like you to speak a little bit to the incident rate in the 2 to 4. Are there any concerns at all with the continued service of alcohol? And if you could talk a little bit more about the circumstances where service has happened not in full compliance in terms of not actively gaming, I'd like to hear a little bit more on that.
Sure. I think, Commissioner O'Brien, what might make sense for me to do is to provide you with some of the statistics with respect to that particular form of noncompliance. And then I may also seek a little bit of input from Bruce Band as well, as I know he has been more on the ground with that particular issue. And I will say that the Chief Enforcement Counsel's Office has not issued a notice of noncompliance on our end with respect to that particular issue. So with that said, however, in terms of over the course of the last 3 years, there have been, when I mentioned the NCFs, which we've talked about in the past, that are issued from the Gaming Agents Division, there were 5 notices from the Gaming Agents Division for that particular violation, and they were issued to Encore, and that's over the course of the 3 years. So with respect to any kind of more detailed questions about kind of on the ground and how that implementation is going, I think I would turn it over to Bruce for that particular part of your question.
Do we need to swear in Bruce then?
I don't know, Bruce, did you take the oath when the chair administered the oath at the beginning of the hearing?
No, I
did not. No. No. I'm just going to get the language. Okay. And raise your hand. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you'll provide the commission at this proceeding will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And then let the record reflect that.
Okay. I think overall, just unmute myself. Good. I don't really think that we have an abundance of 2 a.m. to 4 p.m. issues that at least my staff have seen. I think we've had 1 or 2 incident reports on that service, and some of it has been inexperience on the server's part, but it hasn't been like an uptick in problems that we've seen on the floor.
So I guess part of that comes from, I know I've been in communication with, the outgoing head of GEU, Brian Connors, where I'd asked him to run this report a while back.
Yeah.
And there is an uptick in, more of the incidents that particularly involve GEU step in
Yes.
the, early evening hours, late hours, however you want to quantify it. So I don't know. It sounds like the service itself, compliance issues is not an issue. I'm wondering if anybody can speak in general to just the general safety, et cetera, on the floor with a 2 to 4 service extension as opposed to terminating service at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I think that would be more of a GU issue than it would be on our end with that, Commissioner O'Brien.
Okay.
I haven't really seen it with our staff with it, but I think that's a little bit of the nature of this industry. I mean, people come to the place intoxicated a lot of times, and you have groups that come in and cause problems, and a lot of times that's very late at night. And GU encounters these groups often, but that would be better answered by the state police, I think, at that point.
So, Director Brand, in terms of what your exposure is and what your agents are called into, what you just described, is it your opinion that there's no heightened risk that you see from the 2 to 4 service?
No, I don't see that at that point.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you want to also answer Commissioner O'Brien's increase around it, to the extent you have any insights from GEU?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I review the reports with the commander, on Monday mornings. And obviously the public safety aspect is the critical aspect of what GEU is there for, and they're needed there. That's why the statute put them there, and there's no doubt about it that they, they're there for a very real purpose. But I have not been hearing anything linking, 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. as any of the reason for any particular issues, safety issues that they may be responding to. So I, especially around, right now, the violation piece there would be serving someone who's not actively gaming, right? So, I can't really speak to right now whether the 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. is a policy matter is a good thing, but in terms of whether there's non-compliance in that time period, I haven't heard anything about non-compliance leading to any safety issues. I hope that's helpful.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be very brief. Heather, did I hear you say, and I want to make sure that I'm correct, that there's been no fines given for non-compliance over the last 3 years?
That's correct, Commissioner. With respect to matters related to alcohol and alcohol service, that's correct.
So what I also didn't hear, I believe, I'd like to just maybe touch upon, if we could, the underage drinking. I know we get our stats every month about people who have gone on the floor and who have been able to get drinking. Can you just maybe talk a little bit more, instead of an overview, just maybe give us some stats on how?
We had, with respect to the NCFs that were issued, there were, over the course of the 3 years, there were 5 issued for underage to Encore, and then 1 also that was issued to Fratellis. Now, in terms of the notices of noncompliance from the Chief Enforcement Counsel's office, there were instances from EBH that emanated with respect to underage. Now, again, we're looking at, underage who were served alcohol. There may be circumstances where an underage person comes in and it's realized and then addressed. And I think that happens more often than not. I think, the entities are very mindful of that. So in terms of the notices of noncompliance with respect to underage, with respect to Memoir, which is one that was more recent, there was a notice of noncompliance issued in February related to an incident of service to an underage person. There was also, as I said, instances in of underage gaming that were related to a notice of noncompliance that was issued back in June of 2021. So there have been some instances. There haven't been, at least as far as from what we have examined and observed, that would rise to the level of a civil administrative penalty at this point. And there is, active communication with an entity when this occurs about, sorry, I think I might be getting some feedback, in terms of how they're addressing it. For example, we look at also, did that person get in through the Veridocs at EBH? Was it a situation where the ID was a good ID, but perhaps for a different person that may look like that person? So we take a look at kind of all of the circumstances when we're looking at whether and what type of noncompliance notice we're going to issue. Some other examples might include when if they do pass through the Veridocs, but it's a fake ID. Now that also is considered because, maybe there's an issue with the Veridocs, and I know that there hasn't been a notice issued on this yet, but I know there was one relatively recently where that was an issue, and I understand from the gaming agents that Encore quickly addressed that with their Veridocs system in terms of making sure it's reset to catch those issues. So there has been active kind of responsiveness and cooperation, I would say, both on the part of Encore and any leased outlets where that has been an issue.
And I'll just also, one more thing I'd like to ask. I think I heard you say, so when they are found to be in non-compliance, that training kicks in, further training kicks in. Could you just elaborate a little bit more on that for me?
Absolutely, Commissioner. So we look at whether there's been TIPS training. Now, the regs require that a manager be trained in TIPS before they actually start working. The regs allow for 30 days for individuals who are non-managers to get TIPS training. So that's one element. And I did note that Memoir is an entity that actually now requires that for all staff, not just managers before they start working. And there's also training that's not just related to TIPS, but the alcohol service policies within the entity. So what we do is we want to ask for, well, has that person been TIPS trained? And can you provide certification of when they were TIPS trained? And then obviously, if they weren't TIPS trained within the regulatory timeframe, then that's something that is of concern. I will say that generally the individuals have been TIPS trained. There have been some instances where they were not. And that was addressed by the licensees, and licensees have been very cooperative about that.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. And of course, you can revisit any question. Commissioner Skinner.
Madam Chair, I'm all set. I had 2 items that I wanted to follow up on, and Commissioner Hill covered them.
Excellent. Can I just drill down a little bit further on the list? Commissioner Hill, also, I was happy I didn't miss the reference to minors. But in terms of non-compliance, there have been some issues around unsecured alcohol storage. How many?
Certainly, Chair. With respect to unsecured alcohol storage, there were, in the course of the 3 years, there were 6 NCFs issued by the Gaming Aids Division. We have not issued a notice of noncompliance from the Chief Enforcement Counsel's office with respect to that particular issue. But there were 6 NCFs issued by the gaming agents.
Most of them occurring at the beginning as Encore was settling things, or been recent issues around?
That's a good question, Chair. And let me just look at the information that I have here from Lewis. So in 2019, there were 4 issues. 0 reported in 2020, 0 reported in 2021, and then 2 reported in 2022. So with respect to that particular type of noncompliance, they were more at the beginning.
But 2 recent. So, Dan, if I could ask you, how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, that is with people not locking up. A lot of times they lock them in cabinets, and it's the cabinet not being locked after hours where people could access it. It's usually the management not checking to make sure the locked storage things are secured properly. So it's those kind of issues, or some bottles being left out. So it's more of a management issue, not checking to make sure this alcohol is secured properly after hours.
And any letters of non-compliance issued with respect to storage? Councilor Hall?
Not from the Chief Enforcement Counsel's office. That statistic that I provided to you, those were NCFs, which is the non-compliance form that's issued from the Gaming Agents Division.
I wondered if at this point, did it trigger any non-compliance letter?
No, not at the Chief Enforcement Counsel's level.
Okay, and then we discussed through Commissioner O'Brien the serving while not actively gaming. The next one, my notes are a possible failure to disclose in timely fashion when I think it was restricted to portable bars.
Right, that's right. There were 2 instances of that over the course of the 3 years.
Early on, right? I feel like
Actually, no, those were there was, let me just look at my notes here. There was one that was recent, and then the other one was actually in 2021. And those, again, were NCFs.
okay, only 2. And then I know that the bottle service is a challenge. It also creates a lot of concern. Did I hear that you did issue letters of non-compliance to memo on that particular issue was unrelated?
No, that's correct. Though the Chief Enforcement Counsel's office has issued 2 notices of non-compliance to Memoir with respect to overservice, and some of that overservice involved bottle service.
And are those the categories, or did that? And then the minors, which we discussed. Is there anything else with respect to non-compliance?
Let's see, unsecured alcohol, over-serving, underage drinking, 2 to 4 a.m., portable bar, and then tip certification. I believe there was one instance of not providing tip certification in a timely manner, but I think over the course of 3 years, and given what I've at least seen, is that tip certification is taken seriously, and in most cases, the tip certification is available for the individual who is being reviewed for. And I see Bruce nodding his head.
I understand that even has and Memoir and Mystique have gone above beyond the rec. So thank you. Very, very, very helpful in the context of the timing. So thank you. Councilor Hall, we kind of out of order. Is there anything that you want to add to your presentation before we turn it over to Director Lillian?
No, I don't think so, Chair, except to say that, I appreciate Commissioner's questions. We take these matters very seriously. And I also, again, would just point out that there have been open lines of communication with both EBH and the leased outlets, including Memoir. So that essentially is where I would end with saying, that's important. Our goal is compliance. And I think it's important to have that relationship with the leased outlets and with EBH in terms of keeping those lines of communication flowing. And again, regular communication with the Gaming Agents Division on matters that we take very seriously.
Thank you. Commissioners, any further questions for Heather before we move it back to Director Lilios? All set? Commissioner Skinner, you're all set? Great, Director Lilios, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
And thanks, Heather. We did perform an inspection, an on-site inspection in connection with this renewal application, and the Division of Licensing and the IEB performed the inspection jointly. David McKay, who I do want to acknowledge because he participated in this whole project quite a bit. He is disappointed not to be here today. He had an unexpected family matter, which explains why he's not here. But he, in connection with Louis Lozano, performed an inspection recently of the licensed areas. They generally confirmed that the application packet conformed to the actual premises. They noted appropriate storage facilities and camera coverage and items of that sort. Dave McKay also verified that Encore's beverage manager and all of the jointly responsible persons, he reviewed their certifications from the recognized TIPS training program for each. He did note during this on-site inspection that one freezer was unlocked and contained several unsecured alcohol bottles. Encore immediately corrected that matter and informed the licensing division that some additional steps were taken to remind staff of that particular area that had gone, that was detected during the inspection. So to date, from my seat in IEB and overseeing the licensing division, we've received cooperation and responsiveness on all matters connected to this renewal application. The compliance instances summarized by Heather, in our view, should not interfere with the issuance of the renewal license as requested. And it's the recommendation of the licensing division and the IEB that the renewal be issued.
Questions, Commissioner, on the inspection piece? Questions for Director Lilios generally? Any questions regarding the insurance issue that Director Lilios addressed? All set? Okay, looks like Director Lilios, we're all set here.
Thank you.
Well, I'll turn to please. Good morning again. Jackie, do you wish?
I'm sorry, my computer blipped out, so I didn't realize
okay.
everyone was waiting for me.
No, you know, I was thinking, I wonder what I need to do next. So I think this is the challenge of working virtually, and sometimes it's horrifically smooth, other times not so much, but that was not a big glitch. So you have the opportunity now to present your case, and of course, we have our exhibits. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. We do not have anything to submit in addition at this time, but of course are open for questions.
Commissioners, would you like Ms. Crum to address any of the exhibits in particular questions that you might have with respect to the exhibits that are presented?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Scarrett. Thank you.
Good morning, Jackie. I'm sorry.
Good morning, Commissioner Skinner.
I just, you know, I can't be formal because, you know, we go way back. So I apologize if I don't refer to you as Ms. Crum. And I hope that's okay. Does Encore have any protocols in place to inspect or audit things like the alcohol storage and the liquor dispensing systems? And if so, what are they?
Sure. So we've got a written protocol for closing up every single venue on each evening. So there are staff requirements and then there are manager requirements to check and make sure. Sometimes you can't account for human error, and I think that's largely what we're seeing here. So that's when we retrain. We also use our progressive discipline system to try to reinforce those. In terms of turning off some of the taps and turning off the ability to serve alcohol between 2 and 4, for instance, some of that's done electronically. So literally you can't put in an order in those venues after that time. So that takes care of that aspect. But I think just retraining our staffs, constantly following up in pre-shifts and making sure that people are following the written protocol for each venue is what we try to do and emphasize.
Thank you.
Any other follow-up questions, Commissioner Skinner? What's that? Commissioner O'Brien and Commissioner Hill, are you all set?
Yeah, all set. Thank you.
Commissioner Hill?
All set.
Well, Jackie, that certainly doesn't indicate anything but perhaps great preparation. So at this time, I am wondering if you have any closing arguments or closing remarks that you wish to make in light of the questions that were presented, or clarifications that you would like to share. I'll turn first to you, Councilor Crum.
None on our end. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Director Lilios.
Really nothing in the manner of a closing, but just a housekeeping matter. In the event that the commission approves the application, there will be 26 physical documents that Lisa will prepare, and they do go, Chair, for your signature. So if there is an approval, we'll be prepared to provide you with those.
Right, and we can coordinate that, no problem at all. Lisa, we've done similar work together in the past, so thank you. With that, procedurally, the commission will go into deliberations unless there's any other questions we might have. And we're going to shift into a different virtual room that you would go to your calendars, commissioners, to access of that link. I'm just looking at my notes to make sure that I've covered everything Councilor Grossman wants me to. I don't want to miss anything. Have we covered it? We went a little bit out of order. Am I in trouble?
No, I think you did a beautiful job. I think you're all covered.
Okay, good, good. We appreciate everyone's patience today. And again, Jackie, thank you. And Ms. Panzariti. Is it closer?
Yes, much
Got
better.
it. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity.
I have a big homework assignment ahead of me, Juliana. Of course, it's easy for me to call you Juliana, and it's nice to see you. And thank you for your good work on this. And Jackie, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And commissioners, we don't have to have any formal adjournment. We'll go now right into our deliberations. And thank you. And thank you to the MGC team, Bruce, Burke, Heather, Lisa, Todd, Judy, and Carrie, and of course, Loretta. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.